So there we are. Those are the case studies. In terms of where we are going with those case studies, what's really interesting, but of the case studies that we've got here, what's key is that there is a framework document that sets out what needs to happen. There's the finance route, and there's an organisational and relationship implication for each of those areas. And if we had more time, it might be useful to sort of unpack those, but you can see where that's going. There are common themes to these case studies that are really quite important in how change is happening and why change is happening. In terms of the theory, if you like, the explanation as to what's happening, this is one of the approaches that I've always been very keen on, is an evolutionary approach to technical change. And it's clear that because government policy is changing, e.g. through market transformation, e.g. through the Climate Change Act, that the survival conditions for a lot of these species, governments, companies, or organisms, products, the survival conditions are changing. So different technologies and business models will come forward and be able to survive in these new conditions than the technologies and business models that we've had in the past. Having said, whilst there are common themes, they are also each very much dependent on the particular ecosystem that you find them in, which is why they're each separate case studies. In terms of policy conclusions, I think this leap from a step-by-step approach to policy making to the Climate Change Act, which is outcome focused and therefore work back from that outcome, is going to cause a very disruptive change. We don't quite know when that change will happen. For example, the refurbishment market I've been expecting to take off every year for the last 5 years. It hasn't, and it might not take off for the next 5 years or the 5 years after that. At some point there will be dramatic change in it. But it's very difficult to predict that change or model that change, or it also depends on the reaction. It's not a given. It depends on the reaction of the corporates, of the innovators, how they respond to that framework. Innovation policy is very much focused on technology, as I've said, but there's a huge need for service innovation and business model innovation. As I've said about the energy companies, they're very risk averse. They're very culturally tied to existing revenue models and existing investments, and they don't want to strand those investments. They're very risk averse, and they will generally kill off innovation from within. Their more common mode of working is that innovation is generated in small organisations, hence Steve's questions earlier on, which then get bought over by or partnered with the large organisation. And I think that's pretty much where I want to stop, except that from a policy point of view, one of the key issues is policy is often measured in terms of its saving, the certainty of that saving, the magnitude of that saving, the cost of delivering that saving, cost to whom, and how quickly that saving can be assessed. And with new measures, you get a regulatory impact assessment that kind of explores all of those issues. It's all there in the policy making. That's just those are all guesses, but that is what determines what measures come forward, and therefore what markets might get changed in the near term. But I think there's a huge need for an opportunity to engage in the development of new business models, and in a sense that's what I'm doing through Susenco. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.